Dr. Shelton, tell me about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And stop me if I ramble on too much. But I'd like to kind of start from the beginning. So I'm from Virginia, of course. Grew up in Caroline County, Virginia, close to Fredericksburg. If you're somewhat familiar with the area, moved to the Richmond area, um, and then I went to North Carolina A&T. Now, there's a lot that I skipped there. There's a tons that I skipped. But throughout from childhood to high school, there are a few key things that I think really defined who I am and my approach to life. One key thing, when I was born, I had hearing difficulties. My mother at the time didn't know. She actually thought that I might have a mental disability. And then after they did some tests, they found out that it was just strictly the reason I wasn't talking is because I couldn't hear people. I could still understand social cues
Mhm.
and I could still observe with my eyes. And I had to kind of infer a lot of people's behavior and who people were based off of that. And then when I got tubes in my ear, apparently I spent the next few months freaking out because noises were a new thing to me at that time. My
Sure.
mother reported me grabbing onto her leg when we got near a street because the noises were so loud. But I think that was very key for me. Because of that, I had to take some developmental speech classes, and that affected the way I spoke. Um, and I feel like just having to observe and just this kind of way that I grew up really impacted how I took towards education. So we fast forward a little bit, middle school. A lot of my accomplishments, of course, God goes without saying. I am a Christian. I do believe that I would not be here without our Lord and Savior.
Amen.
Um, but the Lord absolutely allowed me to be birthed by my mother because my mother did not let me slouch, no matter what kind of setbacks I dealt with in my life. She pushed
Mhm.
me to go in these engineering programs in middle school. And at the time, it was summertime. I'm thinking, man, I want to stay home and play video games. I'm in sixth grade, mom. But I'd learned so much from those opportunities. I got exposed to things that I would have never had any idea about. And then fast forward to high school, I'm taking computer science courses because I like computers. I took to it. And after taking these computer science courses, when it came time to pursue my to pursue more education, the field I navigated towards was computer science.
Mhm.
So I went to North Carolina A&T because I wanted to get away from Virginia. I wanted to get some distance. I've never really been out of the state for longer than a week at most, or on family vacations. And of course, I chose computer science, and the field was it was meant for me. I'll say that. And for those who are computer scientists here, or for those who might be listening in, computer scientists are typically kind of introverted. We don't really like to go out too much or anything like that. We'd prefer to be in front of a computer, but you need a lot of focus to be able to learn the field of computer science. It is not an easy field. So I really think just um, my upbringing, my mother who pushed me into these tasks, my father who made sure that all of his children had a work ethic, um, that led me to my field. And I'm going to wrap up soon here, but fast forward a little bit more. The end of undergraduate year, I had no idea what I was going to do. I was talented, sure. I could do the work. If I applied myself more, I definitely would have had a much higher GPA. I knew that. But I won't lie, I had a little bit of a slouch in me. Um, but my chairperson saw something in me, my chairperson at North Carolina A&T. He wanted me to come to graduate school. And I had nothing else really lined up, a few job opportunities, but I mean, nothing that was really suitable. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll try graduate school. And that's when I think things changed. That's when I think I really solidified myself as a professional because during that time I got exposed to research. And we go back to biometrics, right?
Yeah.
Biometrics, when I was a kid, I couldn't really hear. So I had to judge things based off of visuals, right? I had to look at people's faces. And I honestly feel like, given my upbringing and given that my chairperson's research was in the field of biometrics and identity sciences. It just seemed like God kind of put that together. Now, it could be coincidence, but you know.
We know that. Yeah, we know the story. I
But
love that. Oh, go ahead.
I just let's stop it right there, because I think we'll have some follow-up questions that may center more about research, and I think that's where my experiences with leadership and my research really come in. So I'm going to stop for now, and please, Dr. Love, continue.
No, I really appreciate that because you have a young lady, Kim Johnson, her son actually developed a model and strategies for kids who wanted to learn more about which app was it, Kim? Was it Roblox?
Yeah, I think it was Roblox. It was several Nintendo Switch games, but as he's speaking, I'm like, I have a child
Yeah,
who wants to just play video
absolutely.
games. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this is wonderful information because you know kids start out and you think, oh, what's going on with them? They're not going to definitely start out perfect, but if you create that environment for them to develop their skills, there's nothing they can't do. Absolutely, there's absolutely nothing they cannot accomplish. And I think about Drew. I think about him because he's a go-getter. He is. So let me just ask you a question. How would people describe you?
It depends on who you ask, but I think I'll tell you the first word that comes to mind, quirky. Not intentionally so, but I think due to my upbringing, due to the interest that I had, due to the things I was exposed to, I was never really interested in trying to act like everyone else, for better or for worse. So I think that's one thing that stands out. I'm not afraid to be an individual. Another thing as well, I would like to say that I'm dedicated on something that I care about. I mentioned earlier, computer scientist, a bit introverted. We can get narrowed in or laser focused in on certain things at the cost of other things. So I would say that I'm determined almost to a fault. So quirky, determined, and humble, which is weird for somebody to call themselves humble because it almost seems like an oxymoron if you're claiming something, but I'm going off of what other people tell me. Overly humble. I have probably and I'll bring up a concept, imposter syndrome. I don't know how many of you all are familiar with that concept, but it's very prevalent in academia and other forms of industry where people in the field, they really don't feel like they belong there. They feel like they lucked into it. They feel like, oh, other people weren't really checking that thoroughly into me. I really shouldn't be here right now. That is very serious. And that's something that I suffer from even now. So the best advice that I have for that is know who loves you, know the people whose opinions you trust, and you just have to really have faith that when they say you got it, when professionals in your field are saying you're doing okay, it's not them trying to be nice, because being nice doesn't help you. Being honest helps you. And if they say you're doing good, then you have to take it as is and just take that like, okay, if I tell myself I'm not doing good, just think back on these words. And if you get criticisms, if you get advice, you should take that advice. You shouldn't take it to heart in that, oh, they're thinking, oh, see, that's why I shouldn't be here. But you should take that advice as in, okay, this person sees potential in me. So having a support network really helps with that.
I appreciate you saying that because Kim works as project manager for the doctoral students, mainly from India. We have one student from Ethiopia, is that right, Kim? And then Dr. Rowe works with doctoral students as well. And one thing that we have to really focus on, and it's really coming to the surface, is cultural competency. That we are not competent enough to understand the language, and you know what I mean. And computer scientists are very introspective, and so to learn that and take a moment to understand, and then provide the mentorship and the support they need to rise up to that level of excellence. It's something that, wow. Kim, don't you think we need to talk to Dr. Shelton more?
Yes. I just feel like I have a list of questions, but I'll wait to the end.
Okay. Well, Dr. Shelton, your field as researcher is targeted toward biometrics and cybersecurity. And according to Zippia.com, 73% of the computer scientists are male, while only 22% are female, 66% are Caucasians, um, while 25% are Asians, 5.3 are Hispanic or Latino, and only 1% is African American. So, what strategies would you suggest for high schools and junior high schools to employ better platforms to prepare minorities and even attract minorities to this field?
Right. Excellent question, Dr. Love. And I will say this, the key thing that needs to be done, and I will say it's actually getting a lot better. It is being done. If we're talking about trying to enhance participation of underrepresented minorities in these fields, then we need to go to where these underrepresented minorities are at. So typically within the last 30, 40 decades, these programs, these computer science classes, I was fortunate enough to go to a school that it was a mix. So they had computer science courses there that were open for us, but decades ago, they didn't have these at schools that consisted of mainly underrepresented minorities. And it's gotten better. And the reason I say it's gotten better is because the few minorities who are in the field, they've taken it upon themselves to go out to these institutions to speak to the students so that the students could see, hey, it's possible for somebody who looks like me to be in this position. And I know a lot of you all may hear that so much about all kids seeing people who look like them. And I honestly was a bit disillusioned as well. I was thinking, well, just because I have a certain skin tone, that doesn't mean that a kid's going to think, oh, I can be like that. No, that's not the case at all. In fact, when I have spoken to kids, because I've ran a number of coding workshops for middle school students in these middle school minority students, then I've had reports from the parents just tell me afterwards that they were so inspired just seeing somebody like me. And I was like, wow, that is not only real, but that's effective. So that's one thing. And that's gotten better. It's gotten so much better, even in schools where you would think or the main, let's say, average family income might be lower middle class to poor. Then even in these types of areas, the schools are getting better. So we do have growth going on to enhance it. We all do our part to reach out to these schools. I myself go to Petersburg schools. Petersburg, Virginia. That's an area that's mainly consists of minorities, and we do what we can to speak to the students, give them a chance to learn, to see what options they have for them.
Well, I'm going to transition a little bit. So we're just coming out of COVID. Everybody's excited about that. But how has COVID changed the way you teach as a professor and research scientist?
Okay. So I can definitely speak more on the professorship. So I think anyone who's in academia, when we had the transition from face-to-face to remote, that first, it may have been the spring of 2020 for a lot of us. That was a very challenging time. I know my school, for example, implemented a pass-fail policy in place of the standard grade policy, just to give students kind of a fighting chance. So it impacted me because the attention of the students, for one thing, you cannot substitute looking on a computer screen and hearing somebody talk versus actually being in a room with them. I don't think that it's possible to substitute that. So you have to make do with what you have. So when it came to remote learning, I had to think of ways to get students more involved, to make classes a little bit more interactive than they were. And I tried a number of things. Some things did work out. Other things, they were a little bit too complex to try to do in a classroom remote setting. Some things just didn't seem to have the same impact. It seemed more tedious than anything. And I will say, even up until my school transitioned back to face, it never was a completely solved solution. There are always still different ways that you had to approach each class. But I did learn, because every experience, good or bad, you learn something from. And I think what I learned from this remote education experience is that it's the fact that we had to do this and we're still able to get through it, because it's not like school shut down, we still persisted. It did teach me the power of perseverance. Students had to kind of really gird their loins to have the motivation to learn something, to genuinely learn something, even in this hard environment. And for the most part, they did succeed. So that just showed me that perseverance is a factor. I mean, that's something that exists in everyone. Everyone is capable of it.
Amen. Amen.
And with regards to research, research became not too different, actually. In fact, in some ways it was kind of improved. And that's I'm blessed to be in a field that I'm computer science, because a lot of the people I work with in any type of research projects, we all were familiar with the technologies, logging into a server, or being able to just like set up even Zoom calls and just set up remote meetings. A lot of my colleagues, they actually prefer the remote meetings than in person. It's so much it's so much more convenient to just set up. But the research side, I didn't really suffer from, but I know a lot of people, especially like in the field of psychology, the field of education. I think those are the disciplines that really suffered from this kind of lack of in-personness.
Good, good, very good. Thank you. I want to expound on that, but I'm going to move forward because I know that people have questions. I want to know about biometric technology, the biometric systems. I did learn, let me just show my little genius here, right? Anyway, working knowledge of the modalities is face, fingerprint, hand geometry, palm print, right? The iris, the voice, the signature, the gait, and keystroke. And I just learned that there is an ear definition too, identification. And that, yeah, I
There
just
is.
learned. All right, and that's all I know. But but just tell us about biometric technology.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's always kind of funny to think about where to start here, but I'll start from when I first came to when I first started research in my master's, started my master's research. So the iPhone 5S was out at the time, and I'm dating myself. This is back in 2011. So the iPhone 5S came out. This was one of the first smartphones to have biometrics enabled authentication, specifically your fingerprint. The iPhone 5 was released, right? 2 days later, less than 2 days, within 48 hours, this team in Germany, a team of students, they were able to lift the fingerprint off of a doorknob, and they used 3D printing, and they used a specific type of plastic to print a model fingerprint, and they used that fingerprint to get
Do you hear
access
that?
into the
My
phone. So
apologies.
two
Keep
days
talking.
after, yes, 2 days after
Okay. Okay.
this phone came out, they already came up with ways to hack into it, and that just kind of showed that even though this biometrics technology was coming onto the scene for commercial use, already hackers were thinking about how to attack it. So if the red hats, if these malicious actors are already working into attacking these biometric systems, it stands to reason that we need white hats. We need people who are trying to do research for the side of defense, for the side of
Yeah.
people's privacy. So
Right.
that kind of showed the importance of the work. So when we talk about biometrics, you listed off a number of different biometrics: iris, facial, fingerprint. These are things that you hold on you. Like, how many of you all have forgotten a password from time to time? And I know I'm guilty of that, right?
Oh.
And absolutely. And at your universities, you might have a smart card or anything like that that you might put up to get access into a door. But I know I've had a smart card or two that's worn out. That's been worn out. I had to pay the extra $25 replacement cost. I know some people have misplaced or lost their cards.
Yeah.
Biometrics, I can't lose this, and I'm not going to
Right.
forget this. So those are
Yeah.
the benefits. Those are the good things about biometrics. But again, if somebody captures your biometric information, it's not like I can change my face like I can change a password. So that shows the importance of biometrics-based cybersecurity, being able to protect these biometrics or make it in such a way that if your biometric information gets compromised, that the format in which it's in is meaningless to whoever was able to somehow capture that information. So that's just kind of the quick blurb on biometrics and cybersecurity. I could go on and on, but I know we're limited on time, so I'm going to stop talking.
Well, I just want to ask you, things such as the iris detection or authentication, what happens because there's an aging process that takes place? Does that diminish the accuracy of the authenticity of the ID?
Okay, also a wonderful question. So when let's go back to when you're referring to different modalities. When you look at a different biometric modality, again, fingerprint, face, iris, palm print,
Mm-hmm.
these physiological biometrics, there are different factors that you consider for each one. So some of the factors are ease of acquisition. I can get your facial image by just taking a picture, right? It's harder for me to get your iris, and it's very difficult for me to get your DNA. So ease of acquisition is one, but then we go to the other thing and we talk about accuracy. You mentioned aging. Facial recognition has the challenge in that over time your face may change enough such that the system cannot recognize you. Fingerprints are fairly consistent, but if they get scarred up, if they get marked, then you might have to re-enroll your fingerprint. Your
Mm-hmm.
iris, they've done studies on this. Even over time, no matter how old you get, your iris stays very consistent throughout time. So even though the iris is very hard to acquire, it has a very high accuracy. Then DNA is near 100% accuracy, but it's very costly to obtain a sample. Um, so I wanted to speak more about that when we talk about iris and just the general emphasis of aging. Some of the researches that are being done in biometrics are specifically tailored to account for the aging process of faces, for example. So
Okay.
yes, so when you showed the diagram earlier of people's faces, that was another form of kind of biometrics, but that's in line with human computer interaction, trying to identify emotion, but you're still using some type of artificial intelligence or machine learning approach
Mm-hmm.
to be able to identify what this face is. So if you can identify based off of emotion, it stands to reason that you can predict what a face may look like as it ages. So even if a person's face does age, you have solutions that can account for that. So they're working on it, Dr. Love. It's not a
That's
perfect
good.
field yet. It's not once, maybe in about 30 years, give or take, we'll be at a point where we're predominantly biometric based. And that
Okay.
comes with all of the securities in place such that people can't run up and take a picture of you
Right.
to, yeah, to use that to get
Right.
into any of
Yeah.
your protected resources.
Okay. So this is a layman's question that I heard just on television that there was some controversy in terms of the cameras and the facial recognition that law enforcement use that is harder to detect African Americans facial recognition. Is that right? It's not as accurate. Is there some truth to that?
Oh, you must want me to talk forever. All right.
Okay,
No,
no.
no, no. Let me get into this. Yeah, let me touch on this. So
Okay.
this is key, and you are absolutely correct. A lot of biometric technologies, especially with facial recognition, um, there have been several instances where people with a darker skin pigmentation, they're harder to be recognized. And I'll tell you,
Mhm.
it's not because the computer is inherently biased or anything like that, but
Right.
when you have any types of solutions that are supposed to detect faces, these solutions need to be trained on some type of data set. Now, guess what the data sets predominantly consist of?
Yeah. White
So
males. Yeah.
essentially, right. Or
Yeah.
so that's one of the challenges in biometrics right now. You want equal representation of all persons, not just one particular group.
Mhm.
And there are various projects going on to create these data sets such that people can train on them. I'll tell you a funny story. Going back to graduate school, the funding agency for the lab I was in was the CIA. The director there, he was the research director. He was a graduate from A&T. And he even told us he went to this PWI and they were trying to show off this technology. It was working fine for them, but he goes up to it. He's a brother, by the way. He goes up to
Mhm.
it. It can't detect his face. This is the man who's signing the checks for the funding. And the
Oh
people
my.
who wanted to show this
Yeah.
off are like, hey, check this out. And
Yeah.
it can't even work properly with him. So a little bit of egg on their face, but this is a real thing and it can
Yeah.
be very dangerous. So
Yeah.
spoke about that to our students at VSU. We've spoken about just inherent biases, not from the computers, but from the researchers. And when you talk about, we were talking earlier, Dr. Love, you were in a meeting that was talking about diversity. That is very important, not only with respect to classes and whatnot, but even researchers need to have diversity in their minds. And not only just to be,
Yeah,
you know,
good point.
PC, or if they think they're trying to appease the liberals or what have you, but because you don't want technologies that are that don't work all the way. I wanted to say something else, but I realized we have a variety of audiences, but you don't want technologies that only work halfway.
Okay, that's fair. Absolutely fair. Well, before we go to the Q&A, I know you have a presentation, so I am going to share my host. Okay, share the host site with you. I love this. Okay, you have it.
All right. And I won't take too much of your time. I just want to show off, just kind of touching a bit more on my research here. I just want to point out a few things. And I fell in love with the process of research, and I'll say one of my proudest moments in my life, um, for now anyway. I think I have a big moment coming up in a few months, but I won't touch on that. But anyway, currently one of the proudest moments in my life, um, I had to learn this existing feature extraction technique. So how does the computer actually look at an image and recognize a person? It's not just how like we do it, right? A computer has to be able to convert things to ones and zeros ultimately. And there are many different strategies for that, but I had to learn this technique. Not only that, but then I had to think about a way to make it my own, because I can't just do research on this technique unless I apply it in certain ways, but this has already been done. So I had to apply my own approach to it. So I spent months, I spent nights just coming up with a solution. And ultimately, I came up with this kind of wacky technique. The traditional approach uses the entire image, but this was so simplistic. Why do we need to use the entire image? Let's use an artificial intelligence technique to actually try to move the areas around in which we want to get features from, because there might be some areas of a face that just aren't consistent, especially the chin. People have facial hair that they may cut and shave. The lips may be kind of rough because you've got makeup products potentially. You got the chances for scarring and whatnot, but there are areas that stay consistently the same. So, I mean, I tried this technique, and the reason that I just was like, wow, is because when I ran the technique, I ran my experiments, my technique did better than the then existing technique at the time. And I was like, I'm like a 22-year-old, and I came up with a technique that did better than the technique that people have been using. So I mean, I was ecstatic. That was such a warm feeling in my heart. And then I got my paper accepted. It got rejected the first time, it got accepted the second time. That's another note. Your paper rejections happen so much. If you're coming into academia, rejections happen. It took me a minute to realize that's part of the process. So I ran that experiment, and then for my doctoral work, um, I was just kind of on the ball because I had this technique, and my advisor pushed me further. He said, "All right, you have this technique. Now, how do you apply a cybersecurity approach to it?" So I did some reading, and one very difficult attack for biometric systems is a replay attack. So you're normally trying to get access into some system. Let's say, you know, just some remote system. You have to provide your biometric information, let's say your face. You've got some sensor that'll capture that. You've got some feature extraction approach that'll convert it into some digital form. And then it goes to a network to be compared with enrolled uh, data inside of the database. However, hackers can monitor the network, and this is kind of a variation of a man in the middle attack where hackers have access to a network, and they can capture the authenticating packets and replay those packets to gain access into a system. And earlier I spoke about how you can change a password, but you can't change your biometrics. With this, it doesn't matter what form the biometrics is in, whether it's encrypted or not. If you replay it, then that person now has access into your private information. So what I proposed was, and this was also a simple approach. Whenever I'm checking online banking, I have to enter a one-time password. why can't we do that for biometrics? So what I proposed was a one-time password use, but for biometric systems. And I'm going to take my technique that I developed back in my master's program, because it created all of these different variations of where to extract features from, but use each one of these as a way to represent your biometric one time. So let's say a hacker captures a biometric that came from this feature extractor that my mouse is on. And then they try to replay it. Well, the system only used this one time. So now the system's using this feature extractor. They try to replay information from an old feature extractor. And when I ran the experiments, my results showed a clear delineation between legitimate access and when attacks were occurring. So the fact that my results could show that suggested that we could raise a flag whenever the comparison fell within this range as opposed to this range. So that was another just wow moment for me. And that made me really fall in love with research. That's why now in where I'm at VSU, I'm a leader to my graduate students and undergraduate students. I push them to do research so that they can kind of get that same love, so that they can get past their own imposter syndromes, and so that they can just pass it on to whoever they may be leaders to.
So I'm going to ask you a question. Is it a difference between the human DNA and a synthetic type of replication in the prototype? Is that what it is? So the hackers are actually duplicating what you have, but that's a synthetic replication. Am I seeing that right? I don't know if I'm saying it right. It just seems like the difference between human DNA, human prototype, and a very synthetic prototype. So
Okay, and you're speaking about the replay attack?
yeah, and the replay.
Okay. All right, I'm just gonna bring up the whiteboard here really quick, act like I'm in class. So typically with the networked connection, right? You have your client. So your client might be whatever machine or device you're on. And then you have the server side, right? So you have the server over here. So let's say if you wanted to get on some kind of social media site, server, SERVER, learn how to spell, Joe. What happens is your client, right? When you want to get access to, let's say, I don't know, Facebook, from your device, you go to Facebook's homepage, right? You go to Facebook's homepage, you put in your information. What's happening is your information that you put in is sent to the server. So this is Facebook's server. Facebook's server not only hosts their sites, but they also have a database of all of the enrolled information. So somewhere in this server is your enrolled information, right? Karen Love, this is your password, whatever. It compares what's coming from the client to the server, and if it's correct, it'll give you access. So think of that, but for biometrics. We have this connection from the client to the server, but now instead of a password, we're passing along some kind of biometric information, let's say a face, for example. Now a hacker, and we're going to draw this hacker right here. They're angry at life. They just want to compromise information. A hacker has a variety of means to be able to access this networked connection right here. So we have this legitimate connection, but the hacker, using a variety of means or maybe looking for exploits, can read this connection. So when your information is going along the connection, it's going along represented as packets. So that's how information is sent through a network. And these packets can be read and copied by the hacker. So now the hacker is going to take a copy of your packets. And when a hacker wants to get into your web page or get into your profile, the hacker replays this into the system at a later time. And there are a variety of ways around this, but hackers can get around those ways, such as timestamping, salting your server such that your packets have a unique identifier. Hackers can get around that. But with the one-time based biometrics password approach, it doesn't matter if the hacker somehow captures it because it's useless, it's meaningless. And that's was really cool to me. I like that, just kind of kick in the knee to the hackers, where even if they go completely above and beyond to somehow get access to the network and break encryptions and all of that, congratulations, you've now captured meaningless data.
Nice. Well, I am going to open the floor to questions. You have an audience that's waiting with bated breath to ask you a lot of questions. So who would like to start?
I would like to say that I'm very impressed with your presentation. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us this evening. I know in the flyer, Dr. Love mentioned your accomplishments. So congratulations on completing your PhD. And with having a computer science background, she also mentioned in the flyer about leadership. And you mentioned that you're a mentor to students. With a technical background, what would you say are your leadership strengths? How do you define your leadership style? And is that something that you had to work on? Is that something that you had to learn? Because typically when you have, you're good at one thing, like you're good at quantitative, you may not be good at other things like qualitative, but you seem to be very, very balanced individual.
Well, Kim, first of all, but before I even get into that, I know Dr. Love was speaking about your son and just kind of the things he's done. Even if it was Roblox, I'm familiar with Roblox, so I could see him putting something together on that. So before I get into answering your questions, I do want to say your son definitely sounds like he's on the right track. If he ever is interested in anything CS related or anything like that, I think Dr. Love has my contact information. You are more than welcome to share that with him. All right. So wanted
Thank
to
you for
say,
that.
yeah, absolutely. So that's one thing. Now, when we talk about leadership, this is in fact something that did not come naturally to me. And I say that, but I also say that I don't think anyone is necessarily born a leader. You're impacted by your environment growing up. You're impacted by the people who you're around. And then there are some inherent traits in people that might help guide them towards leadership or stray them away. But that in and of itself won't make or break a leader. So for the longest time, Kim, I never wanted any type of leadership role. And I think even now to this day, it's still not something that I want. But over time, I think it comes with experience and confidence. When you're in a field where you're working with other people and you show that you care, I think that's one thing, to care about things. If you really don't care, I'm not sure if you can be a decent leader and not have passion, even if you're very intelligent or anything like that. If you don't have the care, then I think that's something that's lacking. I think that's one of my strengths. Anything that I'm involved with, I do care about, and I care about people. So that care of people, that empathy, I'm a fairly easygoing gentleman. So when it comes to my leadership style, I like to get the opinions of people I'm working with to an extent. So if I'm working with my graduate students, if we're in the lab and if I'm trying to get them to organize the lab, I'll ask them, hey, what do you think should go here? Or if I give a suggestion, I'll say, what do you all think about that? How does that sound to you all? Does that sound like it makes sense? Sanity check me. I'm only human. Now, I think that's one of my strengths, in that if I'm working with other people who are motivated, then yeah, we can definitely get a lot done. Now, my weaknesses are also in the same vein. Um, Sometimes a leader has to be able to put the foot down. Sometimes a leader does have to be a bit authoritarian, depending upon who you're working with. And I've gotten better at that, but that was something that I've always struggled with because, again, my empathy makes it such that if somebody gives me an excuse, for the most part, I'll accept it. So that is something that, in order to kind of work on that or combat that, for one thing, I speak with my wife, to be honest. She's more kind of down to earth practical. So, I'll tell her about my day, and any suggestion she have, I'll say, okay, yeah, you got a really good point there. So that's kind of a quick focus on what's one of my strengths, what's one of my weaknesses, and how I try to combat that. Would you like me to elaborate on anything else?
That was very excellent. You communicate with such precision. I am also a student in Dr. Karen Love's class, Strategic Leadership and Communication. And right now, one of our textbook is the Leadership Challenge. And as you're talking, I can hear so many of the points from that book just come to life in your presentation, in your demeanor today. We recently had to watch a YouTube video about communication, and it was talking about innovation, exploration, and how that leads to communication and all the modern communication tools that we have today. You mentioned something about falling in love with research. You were showing us your undergraduate project, which it seems like it eventually became part of your dissertation for your
Yes.
doctoral degree. What were the steps of falling in love with research? Because as Dr. Love mentioned, I'm also a program manager for our doctoral program in computer science. And just as she mentioned, a lot of our students, 100% of our students are international. The majority are from India. And then we have one who's from Nigeria, a couple, like one from Turkey here and there. But it's like they are practitioners in the area of computer science. They also work, and I have a question about for you, when you were doing your doctoral studies, did you also work and how did you balance that? But it's like they have not fallen in love with research. And part of what they're going to be doing, a third of what they're going to be doing is research in completing their dissertation. They're taking computer science classes and they're going to be taking leadership courses as well, but they take the majority, I think it's like 30 credit hours in research.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I do want to touch on, I was fortunate enough that when I was doing graduate research, I was receiving a stipend for my work. So it made it my job. So I will be completely honest, having to work an outside job on top of doing research, possible for sure. But I definitely had it a lot easier than some of your students who do have to work. So I definitely acknowledge that. Yeah, they have a bit of a more difficult challenge. But for the research side, I was fortunate enough that my advisor at the time, the way he came at myself and the rest of my colleagues about it was very modular. So it wasn't like we were given a research project and we had to get this done, but it was almost like a class. It was like a class in and of itself where we were in the area of identity sciences, biometrics. So he spent a lot of time with us with making sure we had to do our own reading and learn about the field before we even touched any kind of code. We had to really understand the area that we were in. So that was step one. And once we understood that area, we had to think about research projects. That was step two. And thinking of those research projects was much easier because we spent so much time learning about the area. So when it came time for the coding, the thing that made me fall in love with it is in undergrad, a lot of the coding that I did were from textbooks like, sort this array list or, develop an interface that simulates a hotel. I mean, that was stuff that, I'm doing it to get a grade. But this stuff that I'm doing here in graduate school, this hasn't been done before, for one thing, what I'm trying to do. And this felt like it was mine. It didn't feel like somebody else was asking me to do it. It felt like it was mine. So this background of research, reading before even coding, and then figuring out what we're going to do and then breaking it up into milestones, as I worked on it, I think that made it easier to digest, for one thing. And when it finally all came together and it finally all clicked, I stepped back, I ran it and worked, and it was like, wow, I created this thing that I devised, I created, and it gave me a boost of confidence. It really made me think like, okay, if I can do this, what else am I capable of? So that was kind of my approach. It really does. Who you have as an advisor, I think, is very important with that.
That's really good information. Having Dr. Karen Love as an instructor is a blessing. And when you say push, I understand. She advises us and is an example of a caring leader. And I don't say that just because I'm in her class. I can see that she has a vision for us beyond our graduate study. So it is an honor to be in class with her as my instructor. My last question for you, and I'm sorry for hogging you for so long, but when you were completing your doctoral work, did you know that you were going to go into academia as an instructor?
Right. So I'll be completely transparent with you. When I when I got my doctorates, I did a year postdoc. I wasn't really pushed on going back to academia. I did a year in industry. I was at a small minority-owned business. I was in their R&D center, It was myself and one other PhD because it was a brand new center. And doing the work, the stuff that we had to do was I didn't have any love for it. And that goes back to kind of what I was talking about earlier. I'm determined about things that I care about. I didn't care about this. It really impacted me. And then a year later, I wasn't happy. And I know sometimes you don't always get the job that you love, but it's going to be a long life if you work in a position that you're not really happy in, if you don't have the means to get out. So after a year, the funding at the company dried up, seemed like a good time, parted ways. And then I spent a bit of time reflecting what made me happy. And I remember in academia, I love research. I love teaching. Teaching was something that does come naturally to me. I've got a number of teachers in my family. Hey, Mom. That's Rita Johnson down there. That's my mother. But I went back to academia for a year. I said, okay, I'm going to try it out for a year. I'm going to see how I like it. I'm still in it. So make of that what you will. So I think part of me knew I wanted to be in academia, but it was so buried down in me thinking, okay, I want a job that pays well. I need something that I know, gives me consistent hours and blah, 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 because academia is kind of a harsh field. You work very sporadic hours, but honestly, I can say I love my job.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to answer my questions. And I do want to validate what you said. Representation does matter. My son is 9 years old, and when he sees someone that looks like him, you can just see his whole countenance light up. So I appreciate you being the few in the field and then going back into your community to gather more to come into a similar field. So
Very good. Good. Thank you, Kim. Other questions? Yes, Dr. Rowe. Oh,
Okay.
Natalie.
I also wanted to just first and foremost thank you for your presentation. It was awesome. And I learned something new today, even more. But I wanted to interject back about what you said about leadership, because my doctorate is in organizational leadership. And one of the things that I tell my students is I don't believe in one specific leadership style. I believe that for leaders to be effective, they should have certain personal characteristics that are foundational that they develop over time, and life is a learning path, which to me means that they should be authentic servants to the people and the purpose that they serve, that transforms situationally, but transacts structurally to keep a healthy balance. That's my leadership pitch. But but that's something I try to throw out there to my leadership students, because they should have that 2-minute pitch. And so I wanted to share mine, but I like what you said too. And I also like the fact that you talked about the diversity and everything. That was very powerful. And I think that we live in a day and age that needs to be embraced a lot more. So thank you for everything you do.
And thank you, Dr. Rod. I need to get your leadership pitch written down somewhere so I can recite that. That sounded good, because I would say, yeah, I'd try. You're sounding very professional.
Thank you.
That was excellent. Thank you, Dr. Rowe.
Thank you.
Natalie?
Yes, good night, everyone. Dr. Love, thanks for having me on this forum, and thank you for continuing these platforms where we can have such dynamic speaker and Dr. Sheldon. Dr. Sheldon, I have to say that I have enjoyed your presentation. I started off, I was getting my son to the store to get something to eat, so I was on my cell phone trying to manage that, and I was trying to get all this introduction that Dr. Love was putting out there, and I was just like, wow, wow, wow. So you have done great. But also, when you were sharing, you just pulled up that whiteboard and you started demonstrating, getting from, putting in your password, that gets down to the server side. I was just very impressed with that, your presentation skills, which means that I really want to go back to one of your class so I could sit in there and learn some more. So you really engaged me. So thank you for that, and thanks for all you do in the community. I actually have a bit I want to share with you and kind of get your thoughts. And maybe we can actually connect offline when I'm done. You can let me know which direction we can go. But through the Love Family Christian Foundation, we have an international ministry. And that's an education ministry, because I believe like sometimes when we go into a community, you know, we often want to take them a gift or, you know, but why don't we take them the gift of education? And as you talk about your upbringing and with your mom and your background and getting that right foundation, and looking at some of the scientific courses that you're having, you know, we've been over the years since 2018 taking like back to school supplies for the kids in the underserved community to ensure that they have an education, because that education is what gives us the equalization, right? To propel ourselves forward, propel our family forward, be an active member in society and the wider world, right? So as I started doing this mission a couple years ago now, I've been thinking about this. You know, we're given these supplies, but what we're finding is that kids are going to school, but they're still coming out missing the fundamentals, right? And so as I was reading on what this means, you know, I was looking at the STEM program. And one thing I'm trying to develop with a local school that we're working with in Jamaica is develop a robotics team. And that is to bring that curriculum into the school, because they currently don't have one. And as you talked about, you know, do we have in these underserved community the opportunity to rise above their circumstances, right? And that is a challenge. And so starting this year, I'm really trying to mentor the school to get a STEM program going through like a robotics program. So the question that I have to you is, I have this huge passion for this underserved community. Based on your knowledge and your background, is there any particular company, even yourself, that we can partner with and work with to getting this to fruition? And the reason I say that is because I want to see the kids succeed beyond what they're doing now. We want to see more kids graduating with the science and you know, the technology, the engineering portion of it, but it's just not available in certain areas of the underserved community. So if there's any opportunity, I would just want to reach out and say that you could suggest, and I could talk more about the mission that we're working with offline with you if you would like. But I would love to partner with you or someone who you recommend to help us get this program into fruition, because I see you as a telling story of, you know, getting beyond by getting the foundation you need laid for you. So it's not really a question, but more of a reach out in terms of adding to like mentorship that you've already done, and see how we could partner, maybe get some type of a technology going with the school that we're working to develop. I would love that opportunity if you think that would be possible.
Right.
And that goes for anyone that's also listening on the platform as well.
Yeah, Nardalyn, first of all, I applaud you for, I mean, I was speaking about that, how do we get more diversity? You brought that up, that you're doing exactly what needs to be done to get more representation, in the field. I would like to speak with you offline about different recommendations, as well as what kind of role, if any, I could possibly serve, because I want to speak, I don't want to tell you anything right now without following up with those who are experts. So, I mean, speaking with, I know people I can speak with who would know the people to speak with, who know the people to speak with to get these companies involved, for example. So yeah, let's, Dr. Love has my contact information. If you want to put your email in chat so we can just kind of, I can email you quickly so you can have my contact information. I have chat open. So please send me your email address when you get a chance, and I'm going to email you and let's try to get a conversation started.
Sure, and I'm sending that to you right now. I would love that. Appreciate it. And anyone else that needs my email, I'm also adding it because this is a passion of mine. I would like to see this come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Nardalyn. Additional questions?
Dr. Shelton, Dr. Shelton, can we? Oh, no, Simeon, you want to get in there? Oh, go ahead. Go
Yeah, I
ahead,
was going
Dr.
to introduce
Lovett.
him. Yeah.
You first. You
Yeah.
first. I'll follow
I can
you.
always tag on the end. I'm easy. I'm in the house. So you go right ahead, Sammy.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Both Dr. Loves that. Dr. Michael Love. First, Dr. Shelton, I'd like to thank you so much. That was an incredible presentation. And honestly, the best word I could use is inspiring. You talked about the imposter syndrome, which is something that I go through often myself. So thank you very much for that. And I also liked your answer to the question, you can't be a leader without being passionate about what you do, which kind of dovetails nicely into, I'm passionate about what I do. And one of the things I do is, I help injury victims, particularly I specialize with gunshot victims. One of the other things I do is on the consumer protection side of things. And that can be anything from spam text messages to, cars that burst into flames, but it also includes biometrics. And you mentioned a little bit about, kind of the hackers and the evil actors when you made your presentation. Illinois, believe it or not, has one of the most advanced biometric protection and security laws in the country. And that was an area that I was always interested in, but I don't know anything about biometrics or computers. I just want to make sure that, companies that are taking your biometric information are at least putting in the basic policies and protections in place so that, Dr. Karen Love's iris isn't being pulled from wherever it may be stored on whatever company's servers.
Right.
So my question is essentially I know you're a busy man, but are you interested in any expert witness work? Paid, of course.
Well, how about this, Simeon? I feel like we can always talk in more detail because as you're speaking too, I'll say this about myself. I recognize. I'm relatively young for the profession. I'm not a kid or anything, but I still have so much to learn. So what you're speaking on, just these concepts, these are things that you could teach me something. So, could you also put your contact information in chat, and I want to follow up with you offline.
I will do that right now. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Love, for having me.
Simon is one of my esteemed guest speakers that's coming up in a couple of months, so I'm really excited to have him on the platform as well. And he touched on it, but he actually brought a lawsuit against Kia Motors and was it Hyundai? And won the $1.4 million settlement. And so he has a lot to say. I love his experience, and he's kind of a son of mine too. Yes, Simon.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And now I'm a little nervous. It's quite the performance to follow, Dr. Shelton.
I was about to say, invite me to your session because just the little bit that I heard, I kind of want to hear more. So yeah, I'm going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I look forward to it.
That's awesome. All right, the other Dr.
Yeah, I just wanted to tag on to Nautilus' question, really, and thank you so much, Dr. Shelton. This is excellent. This is an excellent presentation. But no buts. What I'm thinking about is how we begin to fill the pipeline with from especially from a minority standpoint of interest and excitement about moving into these targeted areas of industry like you're doing. I don't know how many students you have that are coming through the undergraduate and graduate level there, but do you have are you doing some, or have you seen some successful models where either we're introducing it into the school system? We got one of the things we do have, we sponsor through the Love Foundation is a robotics team. Yeah, that does an excellent job statewide, and we've hosted on our campus here a regional event just in January, and it was exciting to see these young people just creating these robots and competing and all that sort of thing. But then and to see some diversity in those models. So my question to you, I guess, is how what have you seen that works well in the area that you're in, that begins to develop an interest and a pipeline of young people that will become future graduate students and future PhDs, and begin to fill up that pipeline because you know once you get those trailblazers in place, just like you have been, and can begin to take that message back to their communities, to their families, it impacts, as you said, seeing somebody that looks like you succeeding in an area that you haven't seen before sets a whole different level of hope and aspiration. And so that's a long question, but let me just put it out there for you to see what you may have experienced that might help us here as we look to do something in that area.
Yes, sir. So I will say I've been in academia for starting from being a professor since the fall of 2018. So I've yet to see the seeds that I've personally planted kind of grow to fruition. A lot of the students who I've had in coding workshops and whatnot, they were in middle school. I can't say from personal experience, but I will say anecdotally, I myself was in this kind of summer program, and I think that's one key thing. Of course, it's easier to do like a half day or day long kind of session, and that's great. So you mentioned the robotic things, coding camps as well, even hackathons. So just trying to design some type of solution. It doesn't necessarily have to be purely coding. So that means that people who don't have coding experience can just try to prototype and design some solution, make a presentation about it, but still have it related to the STEM fields. So these are things that I think do well, just something that might have a little bit of competitiveness, or something that goes on for more than a day, ideally maybe a summer if resources allow for it. So that's what I can say. I wish I had a better answer for you though, but I'm trying to think. I think a key thing as well in these kind of workshops, it should go beyond just trying to teach them the skills, but you really have to hammer in the profession of it, because I know there have been workshops that I've seen where they just talk about, hey, here's how you code, congratulations, but they never speak about why it's important to learn coding. They never speak about the types of professions that coding would be very important to know. So that's the best I can tell you at this time, unfortunately.
That's good, because we'll continue the conversation, obviously, in the days and months and years ahead, because we're going to want to pick your brain as we look at ways to have impact in the areas that we can have impact in, whether they're charter schools or whatever the opportunity might be to penetrate this area, because this is a great area for us. Thank you so much.
If I can help, I will.
Thank you. You're muted.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, I also want to give an opportunity for family to speak into this presentation as well. I know you said that your mom's on the line.
Yeah, it looks like she had to head off for dinner. I see my uncle and aunt, Uncle Mike, Aunt Sheila are still on. Howdy, howdy.
Joseph and panel. I'd like to speak just briefly. Very proud of Joseph, knowing him from a toddler to now. He's come a mighty long way, and he's gained a lot of confidence compared to what he used to have. And coming from a military background, I did a military career and in retirement now. Well, my wife and I have gone over the world, but we've seen Joseph's his impeccable movement to level to level, and very proud of him, especially in this field that everybody's not very knowledgeable of. I was very curious about, you talked about the iris, that level of identification. I know the military uses that, not everywhere, but in some of our federal buildings. But that's something I'm more interested in learning more about. And so I'll ask him some questions offline. But I really have enjoyed everything we've been hearing so far, and with everybody that even submitted some input. It's been very interesting.
Good. Amen. Amen. Dr. Stein, you're pretty quiet tonight.
Yes, I'm just taking it in, and it's wonderful. Thank you. We hope to see you again. Thank you, Dr. Love, for this work. You are a blessing to us at Judson. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, this has been wonderful, a wonderful experience. Joseph, Dr. Joseph Shelton, I love saying that. I appreciate everybody that's on here. Friday night chats, it's just taken a life of its own because it started in 2020, and the concept really was to provide a platform for students who were asking how to leverage their degree after they received their organizational leadership degree. How could they leverage it? And so I said, okay, God, let's do something with this. And it's really taken a life of its own. So I appreciate everyone who's on the platform. Next week, we're going to have Jarrell Crockett. I should say it's also a family member, but musician. He owns his own entertainment company, so he's going to be on the platform. And then the following week after that, we're going to have Kevin Johnson. Kevin Johnson received his MBA from MIT, and he was a cross-registrant between MIT and Harvard Business Review. He built a $40 million media company. And then we're going to have Simon on after that. So everybody, please tune in. If I don't have your email address, please put it in the chat room so that I can send the communication out so that you can just keep up with the chats every month. It has indeed been a pleasure to be here tonight and talk with Dr. Shelton and learn about him and then his values and his intentionality in terms of research. It has definitely been a pleasure. We've all learned a lot. And so, God, thank you and bless you. Good night.
God
Good
bless
night,
you.
everyone.
Good
Yeah,
night,
thank you all
everyone.
for taking the time to listen.
Thank you. Thank you, George.
All right, let's see. I'm still on.
Yep. All right. All right. Yeah, I'm
Thank
going
you,
to get some
Joseph.
dinner now.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been incredibly knowledgeable, and just learning a lot and growing. And with our university, it is just amazing what God is doing. And we have to change the messaging with our young people because they are brilliant, just like you. And I just want to get that message across. Yeah, that plant those seeds of hope within all of them. So you're an incredible person. And I am just so honored to know you. So get something to eat. And I can still call you. Can I still call you, reach out to you?
I guess you can. I suppose. I mean, you're family.
I really appreciate that because these platforms just bring people together and we're networking, and I just think God wants us to disrupt what's been going on in the country and to bring it to fruition, like who he is, so that he can be revealed in every way. So, and I saw it again tonight. Yes. So I'm going to continue my research in iris detection because I really want to learn about that. That's a really interesting subject.
Whenever you want to talk more about that, ring me up. That's something that absolutely I'd love to talk more about with you.
Okay. All right, then. All right. Take care, sir.
All right. You do the same.
God bless. Okay.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Good night.